The wind howled through the endless plains, biting through the seams of Lily Jamison's worn wool coat. Her arms ached from holding her baby close, swaddled in a threadbare blanket that barely held the chill at bay. The small boy whimpered softly, his breath leaving tiny clouds on her chest as the mare trudged forward, hooves sinking into frozen soil that hadn't seen kindness in weeks. She hadn't planned on being here. Not alone, not with a baby, not begging the heavens to hold back another snowstorm while she wandered west with no destination. The letter from her late husband's brother in Montana had come too late. By the time it reached her, their farmhouse had already been sold off to cover debts, and the sheriff had escorted her and little Jessie off the property with nothing more than a wagon and the horse Elijah had trained himself. And now she was just trying to survive. The town of Elk Hollow had been a speck on an old map, but Lily had heard whispers about it at a supply station a week back. Good folks, they said. Hard work and quiet. A place to start over if you're not picky about your past. That was all Lily needed to hear, but Elk Hollow was still 2 days away, and the mountain pass ahead looked brutal. Her horse, Daisy, had slowed with each mile, and she feared both beast and mother would collapse before they saw a warm roof again. Just as the sun began to dip below the jagged hills in the distance, turning the sky into shades of dying amber, Lily spotted smoke. A chimney. Her breath caught. She squinted. Not a town, but a cabin. Solitary, rough-hewn, nestled against a patch of pines like it didn't want to be seen. Daisy plodded forward as if she, too, had seen hope. When they reached the porch, Lily slid off the saddle, legs trembling beneath her. She cradled Jessie tighter and hesitated. She didn't want to beg, didn't want pity, but tonight, pride wouldn't keep them alive. She knocked. A few seconds passed. Then the door creaked open. He stood tall, boots planted solid, broad shoulders filling the frame like the mountains behind him, a rough flannel shirt, dusty denim, and a coat made of worn leather. His face was shadowed, but the lamplight behind him caught the deep line of a scar along his jaw, and the cautious, guarded kindness in his eyes. He looked at her, then at the baby, then back at her. She tried to speak, but her voice broke with cold and fear. "Please, we don't need much. Just a place to warm up." The man stared for a moment longer. Then, without a word, he stepped aside and opened the door wide. Lily stepped in slowly, heart hammering. And just like that, everything began to change. The warmth inside this cabin hit Lily like a wave, making her knees weak. Her face stung as sensation returned to her cheeks. The glow of the fireplace flickered against log walls, casting shadows that danced across the floorboards. The man, still silent, closed the door gently behind her and walked past, pulling a quilt off the back of a wooden rocking chair and offering it with a quiet gesture. Lily took it with trembling hands, wrapping it around Jessie first. He had stopped crying, now fast asleep against her chest. "You can sit," the man said, his voice low and gravelly. "Chair's warm." Lily blinked at the sudden sound. She hadn't expected him to speak. She glanced toward the worn armchair near the hearth and slowly made her way to it, sinking into the cushion like a woman who hadn't sat in weeks. The man disappeared into what must have been the kitchen. She heard the sound of tin clanking and the splash of water. Soon the scent of hot broth filled the cabin. When he returned, he held a metal cup in one hand, steam rising from it. "Soup," he muttered. "Nothing fancy." She reached for it with both hands, careful not to wake Jessie. "Thank you. I'm Lily Jamison." He nodded once, pulled a stool to the fire, and sat across from her. "Name's Cole." She took a small sip, then another, letting the heat settle deep in her chest. Her body began to relax, if only a little. "I didn't mean to intrude," she said after a long silence. We've had a hard time." Cole didn't answer right away. He looked into the fire, the flames reflecting in eyes that seemed to carry old stories. "You on your way somewhere?" he asked finally. "Elk Hollow," she said. "I don't know anyone there, not really. Just heard it was a decent place to start over." Cole nodded again slowly. "It's honest land. Folks leave each other alone mostly." "That's all I'm hoping for." The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was the silence of two people who had known enough noise in their lives to appreciate the quiet. The baby stirred and let out a soft grunt. Lily adjusted him gently, her fingers brushing his tiny cheek. Cole watched her without a word. "You have family?" she asked, unsure if she should. "No," he said simply. "Had a brother. He's gone now. This land's his, or was. Now it's just me and the trees." Lily lowered her eyes. She didn't ask more. She understood that kind of loss. Cole stood then, moved to a tall cabinet, and pulled down a folded wool blanket. "You and the baby take the bed tonight," he said without looking back. "I'll sleep here by the fire." She started to protest, but he raised a hand. "You won't win. Not tonight." She smiled faintly. "Thank you, Mr. Cole." He turned his head slightly. "Just Cole." And then he disappeared again into the shadows of the cabin, while Lily, for the first time in weeks, felt her heart unclench, just a little. Morning came slow, the kind of gray dawn that seeped through window cracks and lingered like a whisper. Lily stirred to the faint creak of old wood, her eyes opening to the soft warmth of a real bed, a luxury she hadn't felt in weeks. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then she turned and saw Jesse, still sleeping, his tiny fist curled around the edge of the quilt, his chest rising and falling in peace. She sat up and pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. The room was plain. Wooden walls, a modest dresser, and a cross nailed above the window. Everything smelled faintly of pine and smoke. Her boots sat neatly near the foot of the bed, cleaned. Someone had scraped the mud from the soles. She stepped out quietly and found Cole already up, stoking the fire with steady movements. He didn't turn when he spoke. "Coffee's hot," she nodded, crossing her arms to ward off the lingering chill. I slept better than I thought I could." "Good," was all he said. There were 2 tin cups on the table. One was full. He gestured toward it, and she sat, hands curling around the warmth. The silence between them wasn't as heavy this morning, more like a quiet understanding. Lily took a slow sip. "You always live alone?" Cole didn't flinch, didn't pause. "Been that way a long time." She looked at him then. Really looked. His beard was rough but well kept, his eyes sharp under heavy brows, but not unkind. There was a sadness in them, like an ache he'd stopped trying to explain long ago. "I was married once," she offered quietly. "Elijah died last spring. Fever took him quick." Cole nodded. "Sorry. Me too." Her voice caught. "Jesse never even knew his father. He's all I've got now." Cole was quiet for a moment, then, "What about your folks?" "Gone. And Elijah's family. They weren't the kind who help." He stood then and grabbed his coat. "I've got chores. Barn's out back. Feed's low, so I'll ride out to the ridge later and bring in more hay." She stood too, almost too fast. "Wait, Cole, I can help. I'm not looking for charity. If you let us stay for a bit, I can work." He looked at her, not with doubt, but with careful consideration. Then he said, "You can cook?" She nodded. He offered a rare, almost invisible smirk. "Then we've got a deal." As the door shut behind him and the wind howled once more through the hills, Lily felt something strange settle in her chest. Not safety. Not yet. But maybe a beginning. By midday, the cabin felt like a different place. Lily had opened every shutter she could find, letting pale sunlight warm the old wooden walls. She boiled water, scrubbed the few dishes in the basin until they gleamed, and swept the floors clean of dust and pine needles. Jesse lay bundled in the cradle Cole had carried down from the attic, without a word, then left again as if it were the most natural thing to do. Lily had stared at the cradle longer than she'd meant to. It had clearly belonged to someone once, maybe someone small, someone loved. She didn't ask. Instead, she sang Jesse a lullaby under her breath while kneading dough for biscuits, the melody trembling but steady. Her hands worked by memory, muscle, flour, salt, hope. The door creaked open as the sun hung low. Cole stepped inside, brushing snow off his shoulders, the scent of hay and leather trailing behind him. He paused as he looked around. "You cleaned," he said. "I had to earn my keep," Lily replied, brushing flour off her apron with a faint smile. Cole gave a small nod, barely perceptible, but there was something behind it, something like approval. He stepped over to the stove. "Smells like something real." "Biscuits," she said, lifting the lid of a pot. "And rabbit stew. Found it hanging out back. You trap?" "Only when I have mouths to feed," he said, and something flickered in his eyes. They ate in near silence, the occasional creak of the fire or soft coo from Jesse filling the space. For the first time in weeks, Lily felt full, not just from food, but from the simple act of sharing a table again. Afterward, Cole leaned back in his chair, rubbing the back of his neck. "Storm's coming tomorrow. You'll want to stay inside." "We don't plan on moving," she said softly. He looked over at her, serious. "You're safe here, Lily." The words hit harder than he likely intended. She hadn't realized how long it had been since anyone had said something like that to her, and meant it. That night, while Cole sat on the porch sharpening tools by lamplight, Lily stood near the fire, watching Jesse sleep. The cradle rocked gently with each gust of wind against the cabin. She walked over and touched the worn edge of the cradle, Then she turned and spoke through the open door. Was it yours? Cole looked up, caught off guard, then slowly nodded. Yeah. A boy? He hesitated, then, Anna, she was 5. Lily's heart dropped. I'm sorry. So am I, he said, voice barely a whisper. No more was said. No more was needed. That night, as snow began to fall heavy against the windows, 2 people sat in the same room, neither truly alone for the first time in a very long time. The next morning, the storm arrived exactly as Cole said it would. Snow blanketed the hills in ghostly silence, piling fast against the edges of the porch and windows. The wind howled like it had teeth, clawing at the eaves and rattling the shutters. The cabin groaned, but it held firm, built by hands that had seen worse winters. Inside, warmth clung to the air like a fragile promise. Lily moved carefully through the small space, stoking the fire, checking on the stew, wrapping Jesse tighter in his bundle. She wasn't used to staying still, not without worry pressing in on every side. But here, the quiet felt different. Heavy, yes, but not dangerous. More like watchful. Cole sat by the hearth with his boots off, polishing a saddle that had seen years of sun and storm. His flannel sleeves were rolled up, revealing a long, jagged scar down his right forearm, half-healed and raised like lightning frozen in skin. Lily noticed. She didn't ask. But he looked up anyway and caught her glance. Barbed wire, 8 years ago. Snow like this. Cattle spooked and ran. She nodded slowly. Did it heal right? Mostly. Took a piece of me, though. She looked away. I know how that feels. Jesse stirred in his cradle, and Lily crossed the room to hush him with a touch and a song only mothers know. Cole watched her, not with pity but with something else. Something closer to reverence. As if her strength was unfamiliar, maybe even uncomfortable to him. You're good with him, he said softly. He's all I have. I can't afford not to be. Cole leaned back in his chair. My wife, Ruth. She was like that with Anna. Had a way of making you think everything would be fine even when the roof was leaking and the chickens froze. Lily sat down, her voice quieter now. What happened? Cole took a long breath, staring into the flames. Fever. Came through fast. Took them both in the same week. I buried them up by the ridge, next to the wild rose bushes she liked. Never left after that. I'm so sorry, Cole. He looked over at her, his face unreadable. Don't be. I stopped asking why a long time ago. Silence settled again, but it was different now. Closer. Shared. A loud crack outside made Jesse jump in his sleep. Lily rushed to him while Cole grabbed his rifle and strode toward the door, eyes alert. What was that? She asked, her voice taut. Could be a branch under snow weight, Cole murmured, stepping outside. Lily waited near the door, her heart pounding harder than she wanted to admit. Minutes passed. Then Cole returned, stomping snow from his boots. Just a tree split, he said. No tracks, no trouble. But Lily didn't miss the way he scanned the horizon again before closing the door, or the fact that he laid the rifle within reach instead of back on its rack. She didn't say anything, but a quiet unease curled in her belly like smoke from wet wood. The storm raged through the day and into the night, a relentless curtain of white that blurred the horizon and erased the world outside. But inside the cabin, the fire held steady, and Lily tried her best to match its calm. Jesse slept often, perhaps lulled by the warmth and the hush. Lily found herself sitting by the cradle more than necessary, simply watching him breathe. After all they had endured, every quiet breath was a small miracle. Cole worked quietly, too, fixing a broken latch on a shutter, refitting firewood logs, sorting through saddle gear like the snow wasn't whispering ghosts around them. But by dusk, even the cabin felt tighter. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was thick, pressurized, like something waited just beyond the windows. Lily stirred a pot of leftover stew while Cole sat sharpening a blade at the table. She glanced at him, at the scar down his jaw, the hard line of his brow, the steady rhythm of his hands. You hear anything strange last night? She asked suddenly. Cole didn't stop sharpening, but his eyes flicked toward her. Strange how? I don't know. Like movement, something around the house. He exhaled slowly. Snow can play tricks. Sounds bounce off trees, carry further than they should. Lily nodded, but it hadn't felt like a trick. Later that night, after Jesse had been tucked into the cradle and the stew had been eaten in near silence, Lily stepped to the window. The moon was full behind the clouds, casting a dim, eerie glow across the white. Trees stood still like frozen men, and something shifted just beyond the edge of visibility. She stared harder. Nothing. She turned back and nearly ran into Cole, who stood just behind her. Sorry, he said, stepping back. Lily clutched her chest, trying to steady her breath. You walk quiet. Years of practice. She nodded again, eyes drifting toward the fire. Does it ever stop feeling like something's waiting out there? He looked past her shoulder, out into the dark. No, but you get better at pretending it's not. That night, she dreamed of hoofbeats. Fast, frantic, thundering through snow. A child's cry, far away. A voice she couldn't place calling her name. Not a warning, but a plea. A shape standing at the edge of the woods, tall and motionless. When she woke, the fire was still burning, and Cole was at the table, wide awake, staring at the window. The rifle was in his lap. Morning came with an eerie quiet, the kind of silence that made the hairs on Lily's arms lift before she even left the bed. She moved quietly, careful not to wake Jesse, then stepped into the main room. Cole was already dressed, standing at the window with a look in his eyes that told her he hadn't slept at all. "What is it?" she asked softly. He didn't answer right away. Then he stepped back and gestured for her to look. She moved beside him and peered out through the frosted glass. In the untouched blanket of snow that covered the yard were tracks, not from an animal. Too deep, too wide, two sets, coming from the trees and circling the cabin, close to the walls, then vanishing back into the woods. Lily's breath caught. "Who?" "Don't know," Cole muttered. "But they were here, probably in the dark, watching." "Did they try to break in?" "No signs, no damage, just walked around, then left." He stepped away, grabbed his coat, and buckled his holster. "I'm going to follow the trail. You stay inside, bolt the door, don't open it unless it's me." Lily stepped forward. "Cole, what if they come back?" His jaw tightened. "Then you keep quiet. Hide if you have to." She swallowed hard, heart pounding. Before stepping out, Cole turned back and looked her in the eyes. "I'll be back before noon, no matter what." Then he was gone. Lily shut the door behind him, slid the iron bolt into place, and leaned against the wood. She didn't realize she was shaking until Jesse cried out from the next room. She moved to him quickly, whispering soft comforts, but her mind was a storm. Who had been outside, and why had they just stood there? The hours passed like thick molasses. She paced the cabin, checked the rifle Cole had left leaning by the hearth, then paced again. Every creak made her freeze. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps. Noon came, then went. Still no sign of Cole. When the sun began to dip, worry turned to dread. She wrapped Jesse tight and set him in the cradle, then stood at the door, her hand hovering over the latch. She knew what Cole had told her, but something in her gut twisted hard. Then hoofbeats. She snapped her head up. A horse was approaching, slowly, cautiously. She pressed her face to the window and saw Cole, slumped in the saddle, blood on his sleeve, eyes half-lidded. She unbolted the door and ran outside barefoot into the snow. "Cole!" He barely managed to slide off the horse before collapsing into her arms. "I found where they'd camped," he rasped. "Wasn't just one man, at least three, armed. They're not passing through." Lily's heart stuttered. "Then who are they?" Cole looked up at her, eyes fierce despite the pain. "They're looking for something." He winced, then added, "or someone." Lily struggled to hold Cole's weight as she guided him inside, her bare feet numb from the snow. His arm was heavy around her shoulders. His breathing labored, and the blood soaking through his coat sleeve wasn't slowing. "Sit down," she whispered, dragging a chair closer to the fire. "Let me see it." Cole didn't argue. He collapsed into the chair with a grunt, and Lily tore through the small cabinet beside the hearth, pulling out a tin of herbs, a needle and thread, and a bottle of whiskey he'd set aside for emergencies. "This counts," she muttered, half to herself. She cut away the sleeve. The gash on his arm was clean but deep, as if sliced by something deliberate, sharp and cold. "Bullet?" she asked. He shook his head. "Blade. Rusted. Came from behind a tree. They knew what they were doing." "Why didn't they finish you?" "I moved fast. One of them wasn't expecting a fight." He winced as she poured whiskey on the wound. "Knocked the other down with a branch and got the hell out." Lily threaded the needle with shaking hands. "Hold still," she said, voice steady despite the storm inside her. He did. Each stitch pulled something tight inside her chest. She hated seeing him like this. This man who had been a wall, solid and wordless, now pale and bleeding in her care. She didn't even know what he truly meant to her yet, but the ache of worry made the thought irrelevant. "Did they say anything?" she asked after a moment. Cole looked at her, eyes sharp. "One said a name." Lily paused. "Whose?" "Jameson. Clear as day. Asked if I'd seen a woman with a baby. Said she was traveling west." Her blood ran cold. She pulled back and stared at him. "I didn't tell them anything," he added quickly. "But Lily, what did you leave behind?" She stood slowly, the air around her suddenly thinner. "My husband," she said. "Elijah. Didn't just die of fever. That's what I told people." But the truth is, he owed men, bad men. Debt from the war, gambling. He kept it hidden from me until the end. Cole's jaw tightened. So they're after you. She nodded. I paid what I could, sold everything. But they wanted more. Said Elijah promised something. Gold. Land. I didn't even know what they were talking about, so I ran. She wrapped a blanket tighter around herself. The room suddenly colder. I didn't think they'd follow me this far. Cole looked into the fire, silent. Then after a moment he said, They're close, Lily. And they're not wandering. They have a plan. Lily glanced toward Jesse, sleeping in the cradle. I won't let them take him, she whispered. Cole looked up at her. They won't. His voice was calm, firm, like a promise carved into oak. But beneath that, in his eyes, was the flicker of a storm he hadn't yet spoken aloud. The snow outside had quieted, but the tension inside the cabin only grew thicker. Lily sat at the table with Jesse in her arms, rocking him gently. Cole rested near the fire, his wounded arm wrapped in fresh bandages, his rifle now lying beside his chair instead of on its usual rack. The air held a sharpness, not just from the cold, but from unspoken questions, whispered fears, and the weight of what was coming. They know your name, Cole said, breaking the silence. That means they won't stop until they find you. Lily nodded slowly, her gaze on Jesse's peaceful face. I thought if I stayed moving, they'd lose my trail. Well, they didn't, and now we're both in it. She looked up. You didn't ask for this. Cole met her eyes. I didn't ask for any of it, but you showed up on my porch and I opened that door. I won't turn away now. Something flickered in her chest, something more than gratitude. What do we do? She asked. Cole stood carefully, testing his arm. The pain showed on his face, but he was already pushing it aside. They'll wait for clear skies. They'll want to move when it's easier to track footprints. We have maybe a day. To leave? To prepare. Lily frowned. Cole, I don't want to run again. He shook his head. Neither do I. He walked over to a small trap door in the floor and pulled it open, revealing a root cellar deeper than Lily expected. He lit a lantern and handed it to her. Food and water are down there. Space enough for the baby. If things go bad, you go there. You don't come out until you're sure it's me. Her jaw clenched. What about you? I'll deal with them. You can't do it alone. Cole looked her straight in the eyes. I won't let them hurt you. Or Jesse. She stared at him, her breath catching. I buried a family once, he said, voice tight. I won't do it again. The room fell silent. Later that night, after Jesse had been put down and the fire had burned low, Lily stood beside the window, watching the moon cast silver across the snow. Cole joined her, his coat on, rifle slung across his back. I'll take the night watch, he said. You should rest. She turned to him, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm scared. He didn't pretend not to be. He didn't offer easy lies. I know, he said. But you're not alone anymore. Lily stepped closer, her hand brushing his, just for a moment. And in that moment, despite the cold and the fear and the danger looming in the dark, she felt something real. Not safety, but trust. The cabin stood still under moonlight, wrapped in the hush of a sleeping forest and the warning stillness of approaching danger. Cole didn't sleep. He sat on the porch, rifle across his knees, eyes scanning the trees. The snow had stopped falling, but the wind carried whispers through the pines. Whispers he had learned long ago not to ignore. Lily watched him through the window, her breath fogging the glass. He hadn't moved in an hour, save for adjusting the position of his rifle or tilting his head at distant sounds. Every motion was deliberate, trained. But beneath that calm exterior, she could see the storm inside him, the same one she felt. Downstairs, in the root cellar, supplies were ready. A blanket, lantern, jarred food, and a revolver. Cole had insisted she keep just in case. She'd tucked Jesse into the smallest corner with quilts and straw for warmth. He slept peacefully, unaware of the world above. Just before dawn, a sound broke the silence. Cole's back stiffened. His hand tightened on the rifle. 3 sharp knocks on wood. Not the door, the back of the cabin. He stood in one smooth motion and disappeared around the porch. Lily darted toward the cradle, scooping Jesse up and holding him close. She whispered calming sounds he didn't need, but she did. Then, another sound. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, on snow. Cole's voice barked out like thunder. That's close enough. Silence. Then a voice, low, oily, and amused. We just want to talk, cowboy. No need for all the noise. Cole stepped forward just enough to be seen from the corner of the cabin, rifle raised. Talk's free, so's leaving. You got till I count to 3. Oh, come now, the voice purred. We're just looking for a woman. Pretty thing. Traveling with a baby. Said she took something that didn't belong to her. She didn't take anything, Cole said flatly. Then you know her. Cole's jaw tightened. I know she's under my roof, and you won't be. There was a pause, then the sound of more feet shifting in snow. You've got courage, I'll give you that, but courage and a rifle won't stop what's coming. Cole didn't flinch. 1, a low chuckle. 2, then movement, fast, rustling. 3, a gunshot cracked through the valley like a whip. Lily screamed, ducking low and clutching Jesse close. More shots followed, closer now. One slammed into the porch post. Another shattered a lantern. Cole dropped to the ground and returned fire, rolling behind the cabin's edge. He counted the shots. 3 guns. 3 men, moving from cover to cover. Back inside, Lily ran to the trapdoor, lifted it, and climbed down quickly, Jessie tight in her arms. She pulled the wooden lid over them and plunged into darkness lit only by the glow of the lantern already burning below. She couldn't hear the gunfire anymore. All she could hear was her heartbeat and Jessie's soft breath. Above her, war had come to the edge of peace. The air above the root cellar vibrated with muffled echoes, gunfire, boots scraping against frozen wood, the sharp crack of splintering timber. Lily clutched Jessie to her chest, rocking him gently, though her own hands trembled with every sound. Stay quiet, stay still. She repeated Cole's words over and over in her head, as if they were magic that could keep her safe. Above, Cole moved like a shadow, dodging between the edge of the porch and the thick trees behind the barn. His shoulder throbbed with pain, but adrenaline dulled it now. The cold bit at his skin, the rifle stock frozen in his hands, but his grip didn't waver. One man was already down, lying in the snow with a moan that told Cole the bullet hadn't killed him. But he wasn't getting up either. The other 2 were smarter, flanking him from opposite sides, pushing him toward the open. Cole ducked behind a stack of hay bales just as another shot whizzed past his ear. You're outnumbered, one of them yelled. Just give us the woman. You don't need to die for her. Cole snarled through gritted teeth. You're right. I don't need to, but I will. He moved quickly, shifting to the side and firing again. The sharp cry that followed told him he'd hit something. He couldn't afford to think about how badly. Then silence. Too much silence. That's when he smelled it. Smoke. His eyes snapped toward the barn. Flames licked up the side of the structure, slow but greedy, devouring dry wood and brittle hay. They were trying to flush him out, or worse, burn the whole cabin down. Cowards, he growled, then sprinted toward the front of the house, heart hammering. Inside, the firelight from the hearth danced on the log walls. The flames hadn't reached here yet, but it wouldn't take long if they did. Cole slammed the door shut behind him and bolted it. He grabbed the water buckets and began dousing the porch, coughing as smoke seeped through cracks in the wall. The fire hadn't reached the main structure yet, but if the wind shifted, they wouldn't stand a chance. He rushed to the trapdoor. Lily, he hissed, it's me. Silence. Then the door lifted slightly and Lily's face appeared, drawn, pale, terrified. You're hurt. We don't have time. He reached for her hand. We've got to move. The barn's burning, and it won't be long before it spreads. She climbed out, Jessie wrapped in her arms. Cole took the baby without hesitation, cradling him tight against his good shoulder, then grabbed his rifle with the other hand. Where can we go? She whispered. There's a ravine behind the ridge, trees thick enough to hide in. If we make it there before the fire draws them back. But what if they're waiting? Cole looked at her, eyes hard and steady. Then we make our stand there. He didn't wait for permission. He pushed open the back door, keeping low. Smoke filled the sky behind them, casting the snow in orange and red. The wind hissed through the trees, carrying ash and the smell of something dying. Lily followed close behind him, boots crunching softly in the snow, breath hitching every few steps. As they vanished into the woods, Cole whispered over his shoulder, just a little farther. Hold on. Behind them, the only home either of them had known in years was beginning to burn. The wind cut colder as they climbed the ridge behind the cabin, snow crunching beneath their feet with every labored step. Smoke drifted through the trees like ghosts, curling through the pine branches, choking out the scent of clean air and pine needles. Cole led the way, Jesse bundled in his coat against his chest, the rifle still slung over his good shoulder. Every few feet he turned to make sure Lily was close, that she wasn't faltering, wasn't breaking. But she wasn't. She moved with purpose now. She'd lost everything once already. Home, husband, safety. She would not lose Jesse. Not again. Almost there, Cole whispered, breath misting in the cold. The ravine's just ahead. Lily nodded, her face pale, but determined. Her coat had gathered ash at the shoulders. Her fingers trembled, not from fear but from the effort of holding herself together. The trees opened suddenly into a narrow drop, a steep ravine flanked by thickets of scrub oak and twisted cedar. The snow here was untouched, deep, and cold enough to burn. Cole led them down a hidden path that curved along the slope and vanished under a natural rock outcropping. It formed a shallow cave half concealed by fallen branches and old snow. "This'll give us cover," he said. "If they come, they won't see us until it's too late." He set Jesse down gently in the shelter and began clearing the entrance, piling snow and branches in front to break up their outline. Then he scanned the ridge, eyes narrowing. "They'll see the smoke by now," he muttered. "They'll come to finish it." Lily crouched beside Jesse, who stirred in his bundle but didn't wake. She tucked another blanket around him and glanced up. "What if they don't leave?" Cole didn't answer right away. "Then, they won't. Not until they find what they're after. But now they know I'm not an easy target." She swallowed. "You can't fight them all, Cole. You're hurt." He turned to her, jaw set. "If I don't fight, what do you think happens to you and your son?" Lily's breath caught. She looked down at Jesse, who sighed in his sleep. One tiny hand curled at his cheek. "You're not alone in this," she said quietly. He stared at her for a moment, really looked. Then he nodded once. "Good," he said, "because we're not just surviving anymore." They sat in silence for a while, the wind howling through the trees above them. Cole's hand rested near his rifle. Lily sat with Jesse pressed close to her chest, humming an old hymn under her breath to calm them all. Then footsteps, far above, crunching slow and steady through the snow. Cole tensed, every sense sharpened. He raised one finger in warning, eyes locked on the ridge. Voices followed. "Reckon he's running. Cabin's burning clean. Check the ravine." He wouldn't head uphill with a baby unless he was desperate. Then silence. Cole mouthed one word to Lily. "Now." She reached down, picked up the revolver he had given her, and checked the chamber with steady fingers. Above, shadows moved through the trees. They weren't just looking anymore. They were hunting. The shadows moved slow, confident. Cole could see them now, faint outlines passing between tree trunks up on the ridge. 3 men, same number as before, though one limped slightly and carried his arms stiff. The one in the middle, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black hat, moved with purpose, scanning the tree line with a rifle at his side and cruelty in his stance. The leader. Cole stayed perfectly still, crouched behind a log just outside the cave's opening. He motioned for Lily to stay low. She cradled Jesse behind the brush-covered rock wall, pistol in hand, her other arm keeping the baby close. The voice came again, closer now. "We ain't here to hurt the kid," the man called out almost sweetly. "We just want what's ours. The woman knows what I mean." Lily's breath caught in her throat. "You were supposed to disappear, Mrs. Jameson," the man said, slowly circling downhill. "Supposed to vanish after the debt was called. Your husband made promises. And promises don't vanish just 'cause a man drops dead." Cole didn't speak. Not yet. Another man stepped too close to a ridge-side ledge, slipping slightly, sending snow cascading down the bank. Cole's voice rang out low and sharp. "You should turn around, walk away." The men froze. Then the leader laughed. "Well, look at that. The mountain ghost talks." "I won't ask again," Cole said, rifle raised. The man in the black hat didn't flinch. "You don't scare me, cowboy. I've buried stronger men than you. What are you even doing with this woman? She ain't yours." "No," Cole said, "but she's under my roof now, and that means she's mine to protect." The man clicked his tongue. "Bad place to draw a line. You're hurt, outnumbered, and you've got a baby with you. That's not a fight, it's a funeral." Cole narrowed his eyes. "You talk too much," and fired. The crack echoed through the canyon like thunder. The man on the ledge dropped with a scream, his leg giving way. The others scrambled for cover as Cole moved to a new position. Fast, despite the pain burning in his arm. Gunfire erupted, wild, panicked. Lily pressed Jesse to her chest and whispered soothing nonsense, all while keeping the revolver pointed toward the cave entrance. Her hands didn't shake. She was past fear now. She was steel. A second shot from Cole hit Bark inches from the second man's head. He dropped low, cursing, firing back in blind desperation. The leader cursed too, ducking behind a pine tree. "You really want to die for her? For a widow and some brat?" Cole's voice came cold and certain. "I've already died once. This time I get to choose what for." Suddenly a flash. Movement behind the trees. One of the gunmen tried to flank right, but Cole saw it coming. He adjusted, fired, and the man tumbled down into the snow, clutching his shoulder and screaming. 2 down. Only the leader remained. Cole ducked behind a log, breathing hard. Then silence again. Until, click, a hammer drawn. Behind him. Cole spun too late, but the shot didn't come. A voice did. "Drop it," Lily said behind the man, revolver steady in her hand. The leader froze. "Lady, drop it or I swear to God you'll never speak again." His fingers loosened. The gun fell. Cole stood slowly, rifle aimed. "You should have stayed away," he growled. The man lifted his hands. "You don't get it. There's more. She's got something they want. Elijah promised." "I don't care," Cole cut in. "Walk now." "And if I don't?" Cole's rifle didn't waver. "You've lost 3 men. You're out of bullets. And my wife's aiming at your spine." The word hung there, wife like a spark. The man sneered, but he walked. Down the ridge. Away. Disarmed. Defeated. Lily didn't lower the revolver until his silhouette disappeared into the tree line. Only then did she breathe again. Snow began to fall again. Slow, drifting flakes that softened the world in silver and white. It blanketed the blood-stained ground, buried boot prints, and painted over the violence like it had never happened. Lily stood still for a long moment, Jessie tucked against her chest, the revolver loose in her hand now. Cole was beside her, quiet, watching the tree line long after the last shadow had disappeared. "He'll come back," she whispered. "Won't he?" "Maybe," Cole said. "Or maybe not. Men like that don't handle losing well. But I don't think he'll be in a hurry." Lily exhaled shakily, her shoulders sagging for the first time in days. They made their way back to the cave, both moving slow, drained from adrenaline and pain. Cole's arm throbbed beneath the bandage, but he didn't complain. Not once. Once inside, they sat close together against the rock wall, Jessie nestled between them. The baby was fast asleep, undisturbed by the violence that had nearly found them again. The silence stretched on, but this time it wasn't filled with fear. It was full of something else. Exhaustion, yes, but also survival. Resolve. A quiet kind of victory. Lily turned her head toward Cole. "You called me your wife." He looked over, unreadable. "In the heat of things," he said. "Felt right." She didn't laugh, didn't tease him. Instead, she nodded. It didn't sound wrong. He held her gaze, and for the first time since they met, something unspoken passed between them, clear and steady as the wind between pine trees. Outside, the snow thickened. "I suppose the cabin's gone," Lily said softly. Cole nodded. "Most of it. Roof's probably collapsed by now. Everything we had's gone again." "Not everything," he said, his voice quiet. He reached over, gently placed a hand over Jessie's sleeping form. Then his fingers brushed against Lily's. She didn't pull away. They sat like that until the fire in the lantern flickered low and the cold crept in, curling around their boots. But they didn't move. They didn't need to. The next morning, with the first break of sunlight, Cole scouted the hill and returned with word. The men were gone. No signs, no smoke trails, no horses. No, still they didn't return to the cabin that day, or the next. Instead, they stayed hidden in the ravine, gathering strength, waiting out the last gasps of winter. Cole taught Lily how to shoot with both hands. Lily, in return, taught Cole how to wrap Jessie with one hand while carrying firewood in the other. Each night, the fire grew warmer. Each day, so did something between them. They didn't talk about it, not directly, but in the way they looked at one another, in how they moved around the child, in the way their silences no longer ached. Everything was changing. Lily caught herself smiling once as Cole chopped wood with a growl of frustration at the frozen bark. She hadn't smiled in months. He caught her watching and smiled back. And that was enough for now. When the first hints of spring crept over the hills, tiny buds on branches, the soft drip of snowmelt, Lily stood at the edge of the ravine and breathed in deeply for the first time in what felt like years. The weight hadn't lifted entirely, but it had shifted. What once had been dread was now something quieter. A readiness. A knowing. Cole was chopping wood again. Slower now. His arms still healing, but stronger by the day. Jessie, wrapped in a fresh blanket Lily had sewn from an old saddle cloth, watched from a patch of sunlight with bright, curious eyes. "Think it's safe to go back?" she asked, as Cole carried an armful of logs toward the small fire pit they'd built under the trees. He looked toward the horizon, where the burned-out shell of the cabin stood in memory alone. "Safe enough," Lily nodded, then added softly, "Even if it isn't, we can build again." Cole stopped, looked at her. Not just glanced, looked. "Do you mean that?" he asked. She stepped closer, brushing sawdust off his shoulder, her eyes never leaving his. "I've been running a long time, Cole. Longer than just this winter. But I'm tired of running, and I'm tired of building alone." He didn't speak for a long time. Then quietly, reverently, he said, "Then we build together." That afternoon they returned to the ashes. The cabin was mostly gone. Charred beams, a blackened stove. The cradle had survived somehow, as if fate had set it aside. Lily wept softly when she saw it. Cole stood behind her and gently rested a hand on her back. They started small, clearing space, salvaging what they could, stacking stone for a new hearth. Each day they rebuilt not just walls, but trust and hope and the shape of something neither of them had dared to name. One night, as the sky burned with the colors of a setting sun, Jesse giggled from his pile of blankets, and Cole looked over at Lily. "I never thought I'd have this again," he said. "Me neither," she replied. "But maybe that's what makes it real." He stepped toward her, slow and unsure for the first time she'd ever seen him that way. "You know," he said, "there's a town preacher. Comes up from Elk Hollow every month." Lily raised an eyebrow, half smiling. "And what would we need him for?" Cole's face flushed slightly. "Figured if folks are already calling you my wife, might as well make it true." She didn't answer right away. She just walked up to him, placed a hand on his chest, and leaned in close. "I'd like that," she said softly. "Not because the world expects it, but because you're the only place that's felt like home." And under a sky full of stars, with a baby between them, and a new home growing out of ashes, Cole McCrae kissed the woman who had once knocked on his door with snow in her hair and nothing left but a child in her arms. And in that kiss, the past burned away. Only the future remained.